Well, hello folks, and welcome to episode 20 of Modular Curiosity. On this episode, we're going to discuss the amazing dTroy sequencer. This guy is cool. Okay, the dTroy sequencer is not a copy, but is certainly inspired by the IntelliGel Metropolis. And if you're not familiar with the Metropolis, then I would say go to YouTube and check out Mylar Melodies and look at his amazing review of the IntelliGel Metropolis module. And you'll see what the basic concept of this is. But let's look at what the concept is right now. Okay, the dTroy sequencer is a sequencer where you can determine not only the pitch, but the length of time that each pitch plays. Not only can you determine the length of time, you could determine how it triggers. So for example, right now, I have a sequence that you would never be able to do with something like the Seq 3 from Fundamentals because it's sort of a syncopated timing. Just listen to this for a little bit. See, now that's kind of an interesting rhythm that you wouldn't get out of a normal sequencer. And what we're doing here is we select the pitch as we normally would. But then we select what's the length, that is how many pulses. So this is going 2 pulse, 1 pulse, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. But even cooler is down here I can select the gate mode. So for these 2 pulses, I'm saying gate on the first pulse and don't gate on the subsequent ones. But if I went to here, when the dots came back, hear that? It gates on every single pulse. And I can move to say 4 pulses. And let's say on this one, I'm going to go multiple pulses. Okay, now I've returned it back to the original sequence. And we can see that we could also completely turn a note off by simply saying don't gate. Now this one says gate here and continue. So here how we don't get a gate on the second one because I told this one to continue through. But perhaps an easier way to say skip this note is simply to hit the skip button. See now that skips it but keeps the pulse going. If I do this, it skips it and leaves the rest in the music. Interesting. We also have a slide button, which means that we can slide between notes. How interesting is that? Yeah, we can get some really cool, interesting patterns. Now, there's actually a lot more to this. For example, you see the steps down here? The steps are, each of these is a step. So I'm currently saying 8 steps. With steps, I can come down and say I want, say, only the first 4. Now that makes sense. That's very similar to another sequencer. Even though the timing is different, steps makes sense. But check it out. If I hit the count button, it goes to pulses. Now I'm counting the pulses from this row. So I'm only going to do 8 pulses. Maybe I want to do 12. Maybe I want to do 9. But I think I'm going to go back to steps. And then here we have what looks like a play button. Now you might think with that icon that means start and stop. No, start and stop would actually be the run button. What this is different ways to play the sequence. Shall we play it forwards? Shall we play it backwards? Shall we play it forwards and backwards? Shall we play it forwards and then kind of random? Actually, that looks pretty random entirely. That looks even more random. More random? Now, patterns. Check this out. We can actually save patterns in here. So I'm going to go set up a second pattern and be right back. Okay, so what I've done here is I've set up 3 different sequences and I've saved them here. So here's our first sequence. Here's our second sequence, or second pattern. And if I turn this a little bit more, I'll get the third pattern. Now, this is voltage controllable. So what I've done over here is I'm running this now with an external clock, and I'm counting the beats. So every 32 beats, I have a sequential switch. And the first 32 beats, there's going to be no change. So it'll be pattern 1. The second one, the second 32 beats, I've set the offset here to just enough to shift it to pattern 2. The third one, I've set the offset just enough to set it to pattern 3, and pattern 4 will come back. So let's see what that does. Pattern 1. Two. Here comes 3. And back to 4. So we can get some really complex and interesting rhythms going on. Right here, I haven't mentioned this, the C and the chromatic. This is something that I wish every single sequencer had. Every single time I have a sequencer where I need to use a dial to select the pitch, I always have to put a quantizer after it so that I could actually get the pitch I want, have it play in tune. This has a quantizer built into it. Not only is it a quantizer, but I could select the root so I can change the key of my patterns. I could also change the scale. So let's leave it in the key of C and see what different scales sound like. This is the Aeolian minor based off the 6th scale tone of the major scale. Let's go to a blues. Oh, you know what? Let's take this off so we're just hearing the same pattern over and over. There's the chromatic, so that's every note, white and black keys on the piano. Notice if I put it into the Aeolian mode, that note, bum, 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 bip. So that sounds like something that we could perhaps voltage control and change between 2 patterns without even using the same pattern, just change the scale. How about the Dorian? I don't think I have a 6th in here, so it'll probably sound the same. Yeah. Okay, Okay, so now I've moved it over from the resonator, which I was using for my drum sound, to a standard VCO with an ADSR. And what we're going to do with the gate is that we're going to change the gate length. See, so if it's just a pulse, I'm going to have a very quick attack. And since I have a delay on the attack, it's not going to get very loud. If I extend the gate, it's just another interesting parameter that I could feed to my ADSR to change the way the ADSR handles it, the way it attacks. And of course, that's voltage controllable, as is the slide. And by the way, there is a little trick here that when you use the dTroy, and I kind of wish that this was the default setting, but if you right click, go to pitch mode continuous triggered. It's not normally set to that. This is the initialized condition. And you can hear what's happening is that the pitch goes to the pitch and immediately drops back to, I think, probably 0 volts, which would be a C. If you go pitch mode continuous, it holds the pitch for the entire pulse count, which is what you would normally want. Now, let's go see what else it could do. Okay, here's one I made earlier. And notice there's several things happening here. One of them is that the sequence is moving through different keys. And right there, the attack change, or not the attack, but the delay is almost as if every one of these went from pulse to hold. Which is kind of a cool thing. Well, I'm not actually changing all of these from pulse to long. What I'm doing is I realize, let's move this. I realize that if I use my ADSR and I just hold the release long, then my oscillator will last longer than these pulses. And I thought, well, wait a minute, what if I put that on a sequential switch? Oh. There we go. So every time it hits this channel, I have a high voltage, which is like turning the release up. Now, the other thing I'm doing is I have another sequential switch here, and on pattern 2 and pattern 4, and I'm simply every 32 beats switching the switch. I have another voltage coming in from the dual attenuverter, and the output is simply going to the other voltage per octave input of my even VCO, because the two voltage per octave inputs of your even VCO are actually a sum. So I don't need a sum module to change the pitch. I can just feed a second control voltage there. See how now the pitch is staying the same, or the key is staying the same. Now I'll feed it the new pitches off this sequential switch. Now it turns out that hiding over here is another sequencer by the same company, also by Badu. It's called looks like bordL. This is almost the same sequencer with a whole bunch of really cool additions. Okay, what I have set up here is another sequence, and this row of knobs is the same as the top row of the dTroy up here. In fact, let's just move that over here so we can see them both. So this top row is the same as this. The pulse count, this row of knobs, is the same as this. And this row of knobs is the same as this. So if I want the first, well, let's say the second one, because I'm going for 2 pulses. Let's send that to a long pulse. Ah, hear it? See, now I'm only playing on the first of the 2 beats. Let's do that with here, because now we have 4 beats and we'll hear it. It'll only hit the first of the 4 beats and then it'll pause. Or I can have it just play through the entire thing. So this is doing exactly what this is. However, we have these extra rows. Well, what these are is probability. How about if I want a probability of the first note to be something else? I'm going to turn up the probability of... There we go. Now we're getting something kind of similar to what the clay sequencer did. But we haven't talked about the second row of large knobs. This is a whole nother voltage. Now, this is quantized through the quantizer just like this one was. This is not. This is just straight voltage at whatever you set it for. And what I have that going to is the cutoff of my filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a slightly more open filter and then close it back down. And you can hear that the randomness is telling the pitches to change occasionally. Well, I could do the same thing with my filter. Wow, so we can get some really interesting new sounds. And again, this is the difference between randomness and uncertainty. We're not certain what's going to happen, but it's not truly random. How about this? Well, as you would guess, this would be the probability of these pulses happening. So let's take the probability of this one down. And about half the time it should stop, just like that. Because we're saying only play that 54% of the time. Only play this one 48% of the time. So we should start... Actually, let's turn it down even more. So this one should drop out quite a bit. Now imagine this, but you could also do different patterns. Up to 16 different patterns. And the different pulses. And the different directions. So even though this seemed like, wow, that's a whole level above a standard sequencer, this guy gives you a whole nother level of options beyond that. And they're both from Badu. Well, folks, that's it for this episode of Modular Curiosity. I hope you enjoyed it. The dTroy Sequencer, modeled after the IntelliGel Metropolis. Amazing cool sequencer for making really different types of sequences. Sequences where not only the pitch changes, but the rhythm changes as well. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you did enjoy it, like and subscribe. That does help me out. Hey, we're almost at 1,000 subscribers already. Can you believe it? It was just 5 episodes. We had our 500 subscriber special. We're in the high 800s right now, and it's just jumping up and up and up. So please subscribe if you enjoy it. And what do we always say? That's right. Stay curious.